Everybody, video here for you today. We're going to talk some 20th century history. I'm starting an ancient history news video, but I just thought I'd make an individual video on this. I've talked about 20th century history before. I made a video on this book right here, Carol Lombard, Fireball and the Mystery of Flight 3. I did that about 2.5 years ago. But today we're going to talk some 20th century history coming from the Alaska area. We are going to go down to Colony Glacier. This is Colony Glacier right down here. It is emptying into Lake George down here, pretty rugged country. But as we swing around here, this is Mount Gannett right here in 1952. A plane crashed into that mountain. And then over the decades, 12 miles down the glacier, in 2012, they started noticing some debris down here. And then ever since 2012, they have sent recovery efforts to the bottom of this glacier, try to bring these people home who died in this plane crash in 1952. This is a story that caught my eye this morning. More fragments found from the 1952 crash in Alaska. This is physics.org, a site that I track a lot of ancient history news stories on. Now, I remember this story because a gentleman who lived in the Minneapolis area in Minnesota, where I'm from, his remains were identified a few years ago. I remember that story, so that's why it kind of caught my eye. But here, the Anchorage Daily News has a story on it. More fragments from 1952 plane crash found at Colony Glacier. Let's just read. Here it says, Captain Shelby Yoakum, Force Commander for Colony Glacier 2020, speaks to reporters at a press conference on Friday, June 26, 2020. It says Yoakum is based at Dover Air Force Base, which is handling identification of human remains found on Colony Glacier from the 1952 crash of a C-124 Globemaster cargo plane. A lucky Buddha figurine, a flight suit, several 3-cent stamps, a crumpled 1952 mass schedule for St. Patrick's Church in Washington, D.C., and 400 bags containing individual remains were retrieved on the latest effort here up on the glacier. Kudos to these people, trying to bring some people some closure. Those are among the items recovered this month from Alaska's Colony Glacier, where an annual somber search continues for human remains and debris after a military plane crash 67 years ago. It says the goal is to identify and return remains from everyone on board the C-124 Globemaster, which smashed into Mount Gannett north of Anchorage on November 22, 1952, killing all 41 passengers and 11 crew members. The remains of those killed weren't retrieved at the time, and the plane and all it held slowly fell to the bottom of the mountain, where it eventually became part of Colony Glacier. The crash was virtually forgotten until a military training mission spotted a yellow life raft on the glacier. Efforts began in 2012 to scour the glacier to see what else may have been churned up, including human remains and other debris. Now the race is on to identify as many service members as possible before the glacier dumps the wreckage into Lake George, which will become the final resting place for everything that isn't saved. Here is a photo from 10 days ago provided by the U.S. Air Force Mortuaries Affairs Operation. This is an Army National Guard UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter departing from Colony Glacier after dropping off personal recovery team members assigned to Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, and they worked up here for quite a while, and they've been doing this for years, trying to recover as many human remains as possible, and I guess all but 9 people aboard this plane have been identified. But this is archaeology coming from not too long ago, but certainly important. It says the last area they found remains this year was about 200 meters from the toe of the glacier. I measured it out, and that would be right down here. So they're just not sure how many years they will have remaining to do recovery operations here, but they want to continue till everybody is identified. Here's a look at Lake George, bottom of the glacier. This place, very cold, impossible to do recovery efforts most of the year, I'd imagine. But here's a look at this part of the world in the wintertime, I'd imagine. Ice caves and other things. Very cool. Here's a story from a few years ago. I will leave the link below, but here, some of the stuff from the plane was emerging from the glacier. Here is the plane that crashed, Globemaster AC-124A. Here's the headlines coming from the time that this plane crashed. I just thought this was a very interesting story. People retrieving human remains, archaeology, but archaeology that probably means a lot to the people directly connected to the people who perished up here that are still alive. Important work being done. Lucky Buddha statue ironically found at the site. 3-cent postage stamps. Those were the days, I guess. Schedule from St. Patrick's Church. It really got to connect you to the victims here when you find stuff like this. Still in pretty good condition as far as the color on that. But here, these people are doing very important work. I thought this was a story worth sharing. That is video coming from Alaska, Colony Glacier here. I just thought that was an interesting story. I'll have an ancient history news video coming up for you in the next day or two. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very safe day.